What's up, everybody? It's your good friend Lukie, and this is my new YouTube channel. Please subscribe to help me. Look on the screen. Don't be a reoccurring viewer. Only 25% of the people watching these videos are subscribing. Hit the bell icon. Subscribe now, please. Okay, I do apologize if my voice isn't back to where it was after the surgery. I feel like my voice, I've sounded a little wounded because I am wounded. In this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts on Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz and the influence Jake Paul has in the sport of boxing. As you saw before, support the channel if you think I'm a really good dude. No intro, let's get into it. But before we get into it, I'm actually going to talk about the fight I'm most interested in this week, which is on Friday. It's a Showtime champion, not a Showtime championship boxing. What am I thinking? It's a ShoBox card. There's guys on this card. I'm not going to go through it with you. Go to the Dakota podcast if you want me and Dakota to talk and give the analysis of this. But what stands out to me is Paul Kroll versus Guido Schramm. I saw Guido Schramm on a Paco Damian card, ShoBox card. Very good fighter. Very relentless, fierce, aggressive. He's got elements of Maidana. He's got elements of Castano. He's got elements of Roymond Villa. He's an interesting fighter to me. He's a fighter that I'm taking a keen interest in because I see him as a potential world-level competitor, a top 10 level fighter. And because of that, this is an interesting fight because Paul Kroll, even though he's a 2016 Olympian, he didn't make the team, but he qualified. Paul is one of these guys where despite having that pedigree, he faced some adversity, tough situation that, he spoke on, but he spoke on as much as he felt he could. I think this is an interesting fight because to me, Paul Kroll is someone who could be a world champion. It's just about his work ethic and how much he puts into the sport. Guido Schramm, I think, is a guy who has a ton of work ethic and he's putting the skills together to make things work. This is a gut check for both guys because I think both guys have the ability to beat the other fighter. This is going to be a will fight. And I am very excited about this fight. This to me this should be a more marquee bout. This should be a more marquee attraction. You got Paul Kroll, who's this really interesting Philly boxing story that's just under the surface. And if he puts a couple of good wins together, people are just going to learn his story. And it's very, very compelling and uniquely boxing. And then you got Guido Schramm, who has this mentality where it just feels like he's a main event fighter, a big-time fighter, especially with Samson behind him. I think there's a lot of hopes that he goes by the nickname GES, and I think there's a lot of hopes that he's going to elevate and contend at this division in the near future. I think in 2024, they are looking to put him into some really, really interesting, high-profile, very monetized fights. That is the fight I'm most looking forward to this week. Now let's get over to what everyone else is looking for. If you're in the timestamps, you probably clicked the timestamps and said, hearing what Lukie thought about the purest boxing fight on ShoBox. Sorry to the other two ShoBox fighters bouts. Don't know a ton, but I will give the analysis after. I love the ShoBox program. Jake Paul is probably one of the more positive things to happen to boxing because Jake Paul has forced boxing to catch up in terms of technology. Jake Paul has mastered algorithms of social media. He's weaponized kind of his speech. He's weaponized kind of human interaction to a degree. He's a very astute businessman that saw a huge weakness in boxing and also found a big passion in boxing. And thus has kind of gone on this pay-per-view run because he's built up a notoriety that makes him as big of a commodity as some of these pay-per-view attractions that we're seeing week in, week out. We're going to see in a week Anthony Joshua on DAZN pay-per-view. And Jake Paul is probably going to sell more pay-per-views than Anthony Joshua in the United States, if we're being honest at this time. Jake Paul knows how to navigate and get interest in his fights. I think the other thing that's interesting about Jake Paul is he's respecting the game. He's treating the sport like an athlete. He's respecting the game. And I think he truly has ambitions and wants to be a world champion. The question is, can you get to a world title doing the method that he's doing right now, which is fighting former MMA fighters who are possibly a little bit smaller than you, or a lot bit smaller, or maybe not in the best shape and coming in at convenience for a lot of money? Can this be a great development path for him to fight for a world title? I think that because Jake Paul is so good at moving the needle, people have such extreme opinions on him, right? If he was not as successful as he was, I think a lot of people go, oh, I don't care, or oh, he's this, or oh, he's that. But because he's successful, people are either, oh, I like it, he's good for the sport, or I can't stand it, it's a joke, right? It's extreme opinions. There's no middle ground. He is fighting better competition than a lot of prospects face at this point. The question's going to be when he steps up in competition. Now, Nate Diaz, I think on paper, is a step up in competition. Nate Diaz is no punk. Nate Diaz is someone that I don't know that well personally, but I have been around him. He trains with my good friend Kilo the Kid. He's going to come to win. And he's going to, in this fight, if Jake Paul runs into that difficulty that he had in his first career loss against Tommy Fury, this is going to be a hard fight because Nate Diaz has a will that I don't think Jake Paul has fought in the sport of boxing yet. This is a fighter where it's not necessarily technique. It's his self-belief, and it's his belief that he's going to take you to places that you physically can't go to. I've seen Nate Diaz spar people that were smaller than him, and they felt the damages afterwards. When we went to get a pizza afterwards, they still felt the punches. Nate Diaz has a way of really putting it on people, tormenting them. This is a very respectable opponent for Jake Paul to take on, because Nate Diaz is not some guy that's going to say, oh man, I can't wait to show up, smile, be an Instagrammer. Yeah, he has this image of like a renegade Stone Cold Steve Austin, Stockton guy. But really what Nate Diaz is, he's an old school fighter. He's showing up to fight. He's the guy that's very lovable, probably in the public school, has a heart of gold, probably. I don't know him like that, but it's what my impression is. But he was also the guy that was in detention a lot. And he relishes the fact that he was in detention, and he relishes the fact that he's had a hard life to some extent, especially in the ring. And he wants Jake Paul to feel his hard life. That's what fighters like Nate Diaz do to fighters. I've had a hard life, and now you're going to have a hard life for X amount of minutes in the ring. So this is an interesting fight to me, because Jake Paul, a lot of people I see, oh, Jake Paul is going to knock out Nate Diaz. Look, man, Nate Diaz has taken shots from pretty big punchers. Pretty darn big punchers. Conor McGregor can punch a little bit, right? Jake Paul's got power. He does have power, because Bob Santos wouldn't lie to me. I don't think Bob Santos would lie to me. Maybe he would, but I highly doubt it. And he says he's got power. That's Trainer of the Year last year. It's a good coach. Nate Diaz can take the power. This is going to come down to toughness. I don't see this fight being a boxing match. I think this is going to come down to mental toughness and mental awareness. Now, for you as the consumer, you have to make a decision. There was a pay-per-view last weekend, a really good one. There's a pay-per-view this weekend. There's a pay-per-view next weekend. There's probably a pay-per-view I'm forgetting. So at a certain point, you have to pick and choose your battles, or you have to go to certain places where they're going to show this and it's legal. If you're going to watch every fight, you have to pick and choose, and you have to be strategic. What this comes down to is boxing is now a fractured sport, and how many people from our fractured sport are going to tune in to Jake Paul's fights? I think a lot, because he's picking his opponents so uniquely. He's picking great personalities. So because he's picking these personalities that are so attractive, he's creating a lot of entertainment. And we're going to see how far it goes. But Jake Paul, this is a fight I think a lot of people are acting like, oh, this is going to be an easy win for Jake Paul. There's nothing easy about Nate Diaz. Even if I don't know, Nate Diaz is training this, that, and a third, but nothing about Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is a real fighter who started out fighting. He's a proud man. He's fighting a guy that figured out the internet and became a multimillionaire by creating algorithms and content and all types of stuff. That being said, there's a part of Nate Diaz that does not want to lose to a person like this. This is going to be a battle. This is not going to be some whatever showcase type fight. Let me go over to see the rest of this tomfoolery. We got Amanda Serrano versus Heather Hardy on this card. I like both fighters, right? I like Amanda Serrano. I like Heather Hardy. Heather Hardy's always been good to us. Amanda Serrano, I don't think I've ever interacted with her, but she's had a great career. Look, I got to shoot with you straight because I don't have 1 million followers, and I probably never will have 1 million followers, and I have to keep things real to have a following and to have a platform to be able to get into fights for free and to try to get $5 on these little subscription things and all types of stuff, right? That's the way I get my little get down. That's how my hustle goes. So I think Amanda's pretty close to being done. She's had a long career, and I think that she's a fight or two away from stepping away from the sport. And I think Heather's probably at that spot, if not done, and she's just in this spot as an opportunity to get one more shot at a big fight. You know, I think it burns that she didn't get that moment to be a PBC fighter and fight on the main event cards when she was selling out the Barclays Center. I think she wants one last hurrah, one last big payday, one last training camp to kind of keep her motivated as she starts to transition into the second act of her life. What I think is going to happen, if I'm going to be honest with you, and I apologize to anyone that this might offend, I think Amanda is going to do what she knows she has to do. I think that she feels for Heather Hardy for the situation Heather is in, and I think that this was a great opportunity and a pat on the back by Amanda to be like, hey, let's get you this fight, this great opportunity. But I think that Amanda is going to really go in there and try to stop her. I think this is going to be a quick fight because I think Amanda knows she has to really make a statement to land the Alicia Baumgartners, to land the Katie Taylors, to land the Chantel Camerons. She's trying to end probably with 2 more fights and 2 big money fights. And this is the moment where she has to shake up the world, get people interested, and then try to go into 2024 with a lot of momentum. So if I'm being honest with you, I don't see this being a competitive fight. I see this as being Amanda knows what her job is as a professional. Heather's getting a great opportunity. I wish Heather the best. But this is going to be Amanda going in there to really, really make a statement. And I think that looking at her career, that's what we're probably going to see. Chris Avila versus Jeremy Stephens. I've seen Chris Avila around in Stockton. I think he was an MMA fighter. Jeremy Stephens was an MMA fighter. This is for the MMA fans. If you're fans of the Nate Diaz world, the UFC audience, this is a boxing match with guys that you watch to have MMA fights or characters in these universes, and you get to see them fight each other. I wish them the best. I think they're probably the winner of this is going to stay in this type of universe and fight someone else that's famous, but probably not on a world title trajectory would be my best guess. Other things could happen, but I highly doubt it. My most exciting, there's 2 bouts that I find very exciting on this undercard, and they're local guys. Battle of guys that I think the world of. Kilo the Kid Madera. Kalisto Madera, man, brings a tear to my eye how much I care about Kilo the Kid. Kilo the Kid Madera. When my cousin had his situation that I've told you guys publicly about, called me and was very sincere. When I lost my grandpa, it was a Christmas time, he invited me to his house to hang out. It might not seem like much, but when you're in pain and someone reaches out that sincerely, Kilo will always be someone I unconditionally root for. That being said, OG Pete Lopes put me in contact with Kevin Newman. Me and Kevin Newman made a classic video. You can go see that video. Maybe I'll re-upload it. But we made a legendary video together, and me and Kevin have nothing but respect for one another. I deeply respect Kevin Newman, and he's like a modern Roy Jones. And for whatever reason, the talent I've seen him possess in the gym, he's just struggled to transition fight night. But I think the world of Kevin. This is a fight that I hope gets the attention it deserves. This could be a trilogy type fight. These are 2 similar fighters in a similar spot, world-class fighters, and I really hope that people give this fight the attention it deserves, because this is a great opportunity for both fighters. And I'm excited to see who emerges from this, because there's two class act guys. Alan Sanchez is going to be on the undercard. Last year he had a huge win over Saul Bustos. It's on a club show. Paco Damian promoted. It's hard to get fights. It's hard to get fights when you have a lot of losses. It's hard to get those good TV fights. He's getting an opportunity. I believe he's fighting Angel Beltran. Half-baked research quite possibly could be the guy that I believe beat Luis Collazo. It might not be, but I think off the top of my head, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. I believe that's the same guy. Look, Allen's as good as a lot of these guys. Hard luck fighter. Won some, lost some, but I think he's still got something to prove. His fight against Bustos was incredible. It would be really great to see if he could emerge and get himself an opportunity in this final part of his career. He said he's motivated by being a father. He recently got a home. I'm cheering for Allen. That's going to be something to watch for. Let me look in. Oh, and then also, obviously, we got Ashton Silva on the undercard. He's been a friend of the program. Great fighter. He's obviously awesome. And Shadeja Green. Dakota will tell you all about how good she is. She just deserves a good fight, like one against Savannah Marshall. Other than that, there's nothing. You know, we got Robert Helenius coming back in Finland. It's not a very crazy busy week. This is a specialty fight card for fight fans that have an interest in these fighters. And there's also a really good ShoBox card. Hope this helps. Leave a comment. All that type of stuff. It really helps. It's Lukie. I'm out.